The lights in the global studio were blinding. Cameras panned across world leaders, ex-US officials, military analysts, and African representatives. A red ticker blinked beneath the host's desk. Live, Global Security and African Sovereignty Summit. Captain Ibrahim Traoré sat calmly under the glare, his posture firm, his uniform sharp, his eyes unshaken. But then, a voice pierced the silence. "You're a coward in uniform," said Kash Patel, a former U.S. security advisor and current FBI director. Loud, cold, final. Gasps. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. The host's smile vanished. Every camera zoomed in. Traoré didn't flinch. He blinked slowly. He was still. Then Patel leaned forward again, voice sharper. "You abandoned order. You play soldier while your people starve. You're a disgrace." The words fell like stones. Millions were watching. From Lagos to New York, from Ouagadougou to Johannesburg. The studio went silent. Not even the host moved. A slow camera pan settled on Barack Obama, sitting quietly 2 seats away, expression unreadable. For a full 5 seconds, nobody breathed. Everyone expected Traoré to explode, but he didn't. And then, Obama stood up. Barack Obama's chair creaked as he rose, calmly, slowly, like a storm building over a quiet ocean. No one spoke. The lights above him flickered as he stepped forward, not to the mic, but just a few feet in front of his seat. His presence suddenly became the loudest thing in the room. He glanced at Patel, then at Traoré. Then finally he spoke. "Before we throw words like coward around," he began, his voice low but razor sharp, "let's remember that courage isn't measured by how loudly you speak, but how deeply you care." A murmur ran through the room. "Captain Traoré stands where most would have knelt," Obama continued. "He defied foreign interest to protect his people, while risking his life every single day." The camera zoomed in on Traoré's face. Still no emotion, just dignity. Obama took a breath. "What gives anyone here the right," he said, eyes locked on Patel, "to belittle a man who stood up when the world turned its back on Burkina Faso?" The silence returned, heavier now. Kash Patel looked stunned. The host's hands trembled as he reached for a water glass. Obama didn't sit down. He wasn't done yet. Obama turned slightly toward Traoré. "Tell them," he said gently, as if passing him a torch. But Traoré didn't speak. Instead, he calmly removed a folded photograph from his inner jacket pocket. He held it up, just long enough for the cameras to catch. It was an image of a charred village, mothers crying, children barefoot. A lone soldier, Traoré himself, kneeling next to a body wrapped in a blood-soaked sheet. No caption, no commentary. He lowered the photo. Still, he didn't speak. The studio held its breath again. Obama stepped back, his voice soft now. This man was there, not in a chair in Washington, not in a studio, but in the fire. Patel's lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. The host tried to continue the segment, but fumbled his words. Let's take a quick, no, we'll continue." Then someone from the audience, an African student no older than 20, stood up and said, "Why is silence more powerful than your words, Mr. Patel?" The whole world was now watching. The live stream numbers doubled in minutes. Traoré still hadn't said a word, but somehow he had said everything. Within minutes of the silence in that studio, the moment was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, WhatsApp, Telegram, clips of Kash Patel's insult, Obama's calm rise, and Traoré's silent photo flooded every corner of the internet. Hashtags trended. Traoré speaks. With silence. Africa deserves. Respect. Kash Patel exposed. News stations replayed it every hour. But something else began surfacing. Something no one expected. A short 2019 documentary clip emerged showing Captain Traoré pulling two injured schoolgirls from beneath rubble after a drone strike in northern Burkina Faso. His uniform was soaked in blood. He cried with the girl's mother on the ground. The clip had less than 3,000 views. Until now. Now it had over 22 million. Back in the studio, Kash Patel's face was red. He shifted in his seat, glancing at his phone before stuffing it quickly into his jacket. The host leaned toward him awkwardly. "Mr. Patel, would you like to clarify your statement?" he stammered. I was briefed he had ties to extremists, that he didn't care for civilian life." Obama's jaw tightened. A soft voice came from behind the cameras. "You were told lies." All heads turned. It was Traoré's mother, sitting silently in the audience. No one even knew she was there. She hadn't been listed on the audience registry. No nameplate, no introduction. But there she was, wrapped in a simple patterned fabric, face marked by years of sun and pain, holding a worn photo of a boy in a school uniform. Her boy. Her son. The cameras turned. Viewers leaned in. Comments on the live stream flooded in. "That's his mom? I'm already crying." "Protect this woman at all costs." She didn't shout. She didn't curse. She simply stood and said, "When my village was attacked, he did not hide in the capital. He came, on foot, with 6 men. He carried a wounded man twice his size on his back. That's my son." Traoré bowed his head. Kash Patel avoided her eyes. She turned to him. "You speak like you know pain, but have you buried a cousin every year for the past 5 years? Have you cooked with sand in your water and gunshots behind your window?" The room was dead silent. Then she sat. Obama whispered to the host, "Let the mother speak next." The world had tuned in for debate. Now they were witnessing something sacred. The mother placed the photo she was holding gently on the table beside her. It showed Ibrahim at age 9, barefoot, holding 2 sticks shaped like a toy gun. Beside him were 2 small shoes wrapped in banana leaves. "Those shoes," she said softly, her voice trembling, "belonged to his brother." Everyone leaned in. "My other son was shot while walking to school. Foreign troops mistook him for a lookout. He was 10. 10. Ibrahim buried those shoes with his bare hands. Traoré's eyes brimmed with tears, but he didn't wipe them. He let them fall. The studio grew hotter. Or maybe it was just emotion thickening the air. Kash Patel's hands were now tightly clasped between his knees. "I never wanted him to wear that uniform," she continued, "but he told me, 'Mama, if I don't protect our children, who will?'" Then she turned to the audience and asked, "Is that cowardice?" The silence roared. Even the host had tears forming. Obama was visibly shaken, placing a hand on his heart. Traoré finally looked up, not with anger, but with a gaze that carried a nation's pain. Millions watching were now crying, and it had only just begun. Kash Patel had faced enemies across the globe, in war rooms, in private security meetings, behind closed government doors. But nothing compared to this. This silence, this truth, this mother. His hands trembled now. Sweat lined his forehead. He glanced toward the cameras, then back at the table. No more insults, no defense, just guilt. The host finally turned to him. "Mr. Patel, do you regret your words?" He opened his mouth, but his voice cracked. I was told Traoré used child soldiers, that he burned villages. I didn't know." Obama's voice cut in sharply. "And you believed that, without asking the people living through it?" The studio gasped. Patel flinched. Obama pointed toward the screen behind them. "Show it." The room darkened. A video began. It showed Traoré entering a destroyed primary school. Dust still rising. Blackboards shattered. Children hugging his legs. Then, him giving his own boots to a barefoot student. A CNN report played over the footage. Captain Ibrahim Traoré personally led reconstruction efforts in rural Burkina Faso. Unpaid. Tears fell freely now, not just from viewers, but even the sound crew behind the cameras. Patel lowered his head. For once, he had no comeback. The studio dimmed again. Another clip played, but this one was different. It wasn't from the media. It was a soldier's phone footage. Grainy. Real. This was never supposed to be shown, Obama explained. But the world needs to see it. The screen showed an ambush, 2022. Traoré and his unit surrounded by gunfire in a desert village. An IED had hit a local bus. Women and children were crying for help. Most commanders would retreat. Traoré didn't. He ran straight toward the wreck. Gunshots cracked. Dirt exploded. A bullet tore through his shoulder. He kept going. The camera shook violently. A soldier screamed, "Captain, we have to fall back." But Traoré shouted through blood and sand, "Not while they're still breathing." He reached a little girl under the burning bus and covered her with his own body as flames burst nearby. Then the clip ended. Silence. The host wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Even some critics on the panel were now holding their faces. Obama looked toward Patel. "Does that look like a coward?" Patel broke. He covered his face. He was sobbing. But it wasn't over yet, because Traoré was finally ready to speak. For the first time since the insult, Ibrahim Traoré's voice filled the room. Soft, deep, calm, not angry. "You called me a coward," he said, turning to Patel, his face calm but unreadable. "That's okay. You don't know me. And people fear what they don't understand." His voice echoed through the global feed. Over 11 million people were now watching live. He held up a necklace, a simple black string with a torn piece of camouflage cloth tied to it. "This," he said, "was my best friend's uniform. He died beside me. I carry him with me. Not for war, for peace." Obama's eyes were full of emotion now. Traoré looked at the camera. "At 10, I watched my village burn. At 12, I carried my mother to safety with a bullet in my thigh. At 16, I joined the army to protect lives no one else cared about." He turned back to Patel. "You don't have to like me, but you will never understand what it means to protect people who have nothing, while the world laughs." Patel's eyes were red. Traoré placed the cloth down gently and said, "We are not weak because we cry. We are human because we care." Just when the studio thought they had seen everything, a small voice echoed from the side stage. "Excuse me, I want to say something." It was a girl, no older than 8. A translator leaned over her shoulder. Her eyes were tired, her dress too big. But she stood tall. Obama gently gestured to allow her forward. The crowd parted. She walked up to the microphone with a tiny paper in her hand. Her hands shook as she read, "My name is Aissatou. I am from Palma. Bad men came with guns. They burned our school. My brother died. My mama cried." She looked up at Traoré. "This man," she said, pointing, "carried me for 2 hours through the bush. I was bleeding. He didn't leave me." Even Patel was frozen. "He gave me his water, his jacket. He told me I would live." Aissatou's voice cracked. "I have no papa. I have no house. But when I see him..." She turned to Traoré again. "I feel safe." The studio was silent. Even viewers at home were writing in the comments, "I can't stop crying. My heart is breaking." The camera caught Traoré softly placing his hand over his heart. Obama rose again. But this time, he didn't speak with the fire of a politician. He spoke with the soul of a father. He approached the little girl and knelt beside her. The cameras followed. "You are brave," he said, "and one day, you will lead people too." Then he stood and looked around the studio. "I've seen a lot in my life," he said, voice low. "War zones, starvation, collapse. But I've also seen people, good people, rise when the world left them behind." He turned to Traoré. "You're one of them." Obama took a breath, voice cracking. "Do you all know how rare it is for a leader to be loved by children more than by generals?" He shook his head. "It's easy to drop bombs. It's hard to pick up a child." A tear slipped down his cheek. "I've read the briefings. I've seen the headlines. But what I've seen here today is not a coward in uniform." Obama looked at Patel. "It's a man who makes cowards uncomfortable." Applause began. Quiet, then rising. Not staged, not polite, real. Even some international delegates wiped their eyes. And somewhere across the world, millions of viewers whispered, "He's not who they said he was." The energy in the room changed. For the first time, Kash Patel stood, but not to argue. He looked broken. He removed his earpiece, stepped away from the table, took a deep breath. "I didn't come here to cry," he said quietly, "but I didn't come to lie either." He turned to Traoré. "I've served in intelligence. I've read hundreds of classified documents, but none of them showed me this," he said, motioning to the screen, the girl, the necklace, the photograph. "They said you were just another warlord in uniform." He paused. "I see now. You're the only one who stayed behind when the West moved on." He turned to the host. "I owe Africa an apology." Then he looked straight at the camera. "And I owe you, Captain, my respect." Traoré simply nodded. The applause returned, but this time it was joined by the sound of tears, not just in the studio but around the world. Thousands flooded the live chat. "I'm crying so much. I judged him too quickly. Africa deserves better. Traoré is better." And deep inside the studio, Traoré finally smiled, not for cameras, but for hope. Just when the studio started to settle, a tall woman in a blue suit stood up. Her voice was soft but unmistakable, a senior EU diplomat. Cameras snapped toward her. No one had expected her to speak. "I came here to observe," she said. "But I can't sit silent anymore." She looked at Traoré, her eyes glistening. "I met you once, briefly, in Niger. You carried a wounded farmer into our tent. You didn't know who I was. You just asked if we had morphine." Gasps in the studio. "You stayed outside the tent all night barefoot, holding his hand." She paused. "We were warned you were dangerous, but I saw the opposite. I saw a man who never asked for credit, who cried when the man died." She turned to Patel. "Some of us were fed lies. The rest of us chose to believe them." The host looked like he was holding his breath. "I speak for many Europeans today," she said. "We owe Captain Traoré more than an apology. We owe him respect and reparations." For the first time in years, the African delegation in the studio stood and applauded. Traoré stayed seated, humble, silent, unshaken. But inside, his heart trembled. As the room calmed again, Obama leaned forward. He spoke without a microphone, yet every ear heard him. "There's something I never told anyone." The studio froze. "I once visited Burkina Faso, before I was president. Secret trip, no cameras. People exchanged shocked looks. I saw poverty, dust, kids walking 10 miles barefoot for water. But I also saw a boy, about 17, organizing food rations, helping elders cross flooded roads, handing out bread." Obama looked straight at Traoré. "It was you." The room gasped. Even Traoré's eyes widened. "I never forgot you. I never knew your name. But that image stayed in my soul. A boy doing a leader's job, while the world ignored him. He wiped his eye. Years later in Washington, I saw your name on a report. I paused. I wanted to speak up. I should have said more. Obama's voice cracked. Maybe if I had, you wouldn't have had to carry so much pain alone. There were no words, only sniffles. He reached across the table and gently took Traoré's hand. "I'm sorry," he said. And for the first time that night, Captain Traoré whispered back, "Thank you for seeing me." Within 24 hours, the full studio clip went viral. It wasn't just trending, it was everywhere. The child who survived because of Traoré. Obama breaks down on air. Real African leadership. From coward to hero. See what the world missed about Traoré. Newsrooms replayed the footage on loop. Analysts debated every word. Memes spread, but so did tears. And then, world leaders began calling. The president of Ghana posted, "Africa needs more men like Captain Traoré, not fewer." A former UN official tweeted, "I once signed off on a report labeling him unstable. I was wrong." Even Kash Patel, now quiet, released a public video. "I got it wrong. The world got it wrong. I will spend the rest of my life correcting that mistake." But the most powerful moment, the United Nations posted a rare statement. "We invite Captain Ibrahim Traoré to speak before the General Assembly, not as a soldier, but as a symbol of true African dignity." Traoré didn't post, didn't respond. He returned to Burkina Faso to finish building a rural school. No cameras, just bricks, kids, laughter, and the necklace of his fallen brother still around his neck. The studio was dead silent. Everyone expected Captain Traoré to clap back, but he didn't. Instead, he looked directly at Kash Patel, not with anger, but with something deeper. Pity. That's when Obama stepped forward again, holding a worn document. His voice didn't shake, but the walls felt like they did. "This," he said, holding up a page, "is a declassified memo from 2018. It reveals secret funding to destabilize several African regions, including Burkina Faso." Gasps. Cameras zoomed in. Obama's voice rose just a little. "And guess who signed off on it?" He turned the document to the camera. "Kash Patel." Patel's face went pale. He blinked, but couldn't speak. A woman in the audience began crying softly. Obama turned to the panel. "Before you call an African leader a coward, maybe look at the mirror first." The studio exploded in whispers. Twitter lit up. Hashtags like Patel exposed and I stand with Traoré trended globally. But the moment wasn't over. Traoré slowly stood, fixing his military coat. What he said next didn't just silence the room, it healed something broken in millions of African hearts. He looked into the camera and spoke. Traoré stepped forward, not in anger, not in pride, but with heavy calm. "My name," he began, "is Ibrahim Traoré, and yes, I wear a uniform, but not for medals, not for power." His voice was soft but carried the weight of history. "I wear this uniform for the children I buried with my own hands in villages no one reports on. I wear it for mothers who walked 10 miles barefoot just to find a safe meal. I wear it for the ones forgotten." Cameras caught tears falling silently from the eyes of two panelists. "I've faced bullets, not tweets. I've lost brothers, not followers. And if you think standing for your people is cowardice," he looked straight at Patel, "then maybe the world needs more cowards like me." Silence, long, heavy. Obama gently placed his hand on Traoré's shoulder. "History will remember this moment," he said. Across Africa, homes erupted in cheers. Even some U.S. audiences applauded. A young African boy in London recorded himself saluting the TV screen, his eyes red. Patel didn't say another word, because he couldn't. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. and the world had just chosen its side. The final minutes of the broadcast were electric. Producers whispered that online viewership had crossed 120 million live viewers, more than the World Cup final. But no one noticed, because something deeper was happening. A shift. Obama looked at the camera one last time. Africa doesn't need approval, it needs respect, and leaders like Captain Traoré, they are why the continent will rise. The studio audience stood, one by one. Applause, loud, thunderous, real. Even some of the panelists who had once doubted Traoré were wiping tears. Kash Patel quietly walked off set, alone, ignored. As cameras faded, Obama leaned into Traoré's ear. That boy in you, the one who once dreamed of justice? He's proud right now. Traoré didn't respond, but a single tear ran down his cheek, and the world watched it fall. If this story moved you even a little, if it made you cry, smile, or see something differently, hit that like button. Comment, Africa will rise, if you believe in Captain Traoré's courage. And please, subscribe. Your support helps us tell real stories that the world must never forget. Because this isn't just content, it's a movement.